serious group. Okay.
Mhm.
You know, can I give you the exact details of who they were? No, but I can get that information if you need to have it.
I'm curious because it's a study that we would certainly share with
Well,
basically our membership.
I'll tell you this. You know Mark Feiner? So Mark Feiner used to work for Sony back in the day when Sony introduced the compact disc. Remember that contrivance? So Mark was Mark was Sony's point man for the CD revolution, and of course I was Mark's nemesis because I went to every meeting that Mark called to tout how great the compact disc was, and I stood up and said, "Look, it may be good someday, but right now the sound stinks, and I do not like to hear people say that this CD reissue of something that was out on vinyl is the bee's knees when it really sounds terrible." And you know, so I was on that case, and I said, and the packaging is horrible. You can call it a jewel case all you want, but it's a cheap piece of plastic and with a flimsy piece of paper stapled together, and you're charging too much money for it. So he, you know, Mark knows me very well. So now Mark is my ally. Mark is involved with helping to promote vinyl, which is just unbelievable. And so Mark is involved with this big study that was done by a serious research group on the level of McKinsey or Johnson & Johnson, or, you know, some serious group did this big study, and it's available for purchase. And he sent me the one sheet on it, and I wrote a thing on Analog Planet. Oh, I shouldn't call it Analog Planet. I now call it my previous endeavor, since they will not refer to my, they will not refer to my new thing. So they'll talk about I'm on to a new endeavor. So I'm going to say my previous endeavor, I did write about this study, and so they are now giving the two major magazines, The Absolute Sound and my previous endeavor, the right to publish a lot of this information in exchange for an advertisement that they're going to publish about this, and they're going to quote my what I said about it on my previous endeavor, but now it's going to say Michael Fremer tracking angle, which is, to me, it's just really fun. Anyway, are we on now? No, 3 minutes.
People are people. I think everybody's
look.
Open.
Somebody got up and left already. Oh, he's closing the curtain so he can get a better look. So
yeah, I think everybody who's on can hear what you're saying.
Right. So at 6 o'clock my time, you're going to make an introduction and have a beginning of a meeting, right? And I'll just
typically what we do is we wait until people get logged in, because people will, they're trying to find the link and their computer's not working. So we give them like 5 to 10 minutes. And when we get a critical mass of people on, because we don't want to do all of the intros.
Sean Murphy is here. I love Sean Murphy. Hi, Sean. He's one of the great engineers. It's fantastic.
Hey, Michael. How are you?
Good. I am good. Everything's good.
Yeah. Good to see you.
My blood pressure is down now. I'm relaxed. I no longer have to hand in a 3,000-word column every month, which is really nice.
That's all good. Yeah.
That was a lot of work. And okay.
And starting a new website is not a lot of work.
Well, I have partners in my new website, and they are doing all of the back end work, and they are selling the advertising because I don't get involved in that end of it. And they're my former partners in the magazine I publish, which I will hold up for those who don't know it. You know, this magazine, The Track.
You may have to do this again, because people are coming on pretty quickly. Yeah, we've got 20. Yeah, we've got about 23 people. On, but they're popping on pretty quickly. So I think,
okay.
And it's not even 3 o'clock yet.
Right. So, okay. So I shouldn't say too much because I don't want to give it all away, you know.
We can talk about the event you just went to.
The Making Vinyl event was absolutely incredible in Nashville. And that Nashville is going to be, and Tennessee is going to be the vinyl production capital of America, is what's happening. And then next to that will be Camarillo, California, where RTI is, and where Rick Hashimoto is setting up a pressing plant down the road in conjunction with his son and with Jim Davis from Mobile Fidelity and Music Direct. But other people are going to be pressing there. So they're going to start out with 3 or 4 presses, and they're going to end up with, I think, 16. And they're getting the old school SMTs. It's going to be incredible. So that this happened is something I never expected it to be like this. And all the research shows it's being driven by young people. It's not alta cockers, it's young people.
Pretty cool.
So
Michael, how do you want to do it? Because everyone is open. So technically they could kind of blurt out questions, but we want to keep things manageable. So do you want people to put things in the chat? If somebody puts a question in the chat, will you read it and answer it?
Okay, I have to get the chat, the window to show.
There's a little, go down to the bottom. There's a little chat you could click on. So David Hicks sent a little chat. Yeah, and then so people
who can see your messages. Okay, they're gonna chat me. I'm not gonna chat them, right?
Yes. Yeah, they'll chat you. So if you have your chat open and somebody, puts a question up and you feel like answering it, you can.
I'm just looking at like here's one of the new boilers at United Record Pressing. They've invested. Okay, I'm not going to say any more about this because I'll talk about it when we get started. Why should I talk to the early birds? So wait till everybody gets on.
Well, there's 35 early birds, so so you can.
Here's the study, and I'll when I write about this or do my YouTube video about this, I will get into more detail. But this is basically what the study shows. The first bullet point is key factors driving growth: the sound of vinyl, audio quality, authenticity, the packaging of vinyl, the artwork, the desire to own artists' work. Mm-hmm. It's fantastic. It's not, they're buying it to hang it on the wall,
Well,
also,
when somebody buys a record, does the artist make more money than if they download?
If the artist is on tour and they're selling the record backstage, out in the lobby of the venue, yeah, they make more money. If they press it themselves, of course, they make more money. And they make more money than streaming, sure. And by the way, I also got to hear the T-Bone Burnett's plated lacquer. You know about that whole thing? Most of you must know about that. Well, yeah. We can talk about that too, because it's pretty hilarious. And, I sat with T-Bone and I questioned, what the heck are you doing? But, you know me, Leslie, I don't hold back.
So what did T-Bone say?
Well, so what they're doing, well, let's wait till we get started here.
Okay. So we've got 43 people on. We've got almost half the group, and I don't want people to wait too long. So maybe in like 3 minutes, we're gonna do some quick announcements about all of this new tech. Have you seen our new website, Michael, by any chance? I know you've been busy.
Have I done what?
You've seen our new website. We have a new website. We have a new app.
I haven't been on it. I know about it. Sent me a thing about it. I've been
I know
crushed.
You've been
I've got a question. Are shortage, unavailability of desirable LPs a permanent thing? No, it's not, because all these new pressing plants are coming online now. It's not. Let's wait to answer the questions, because I only should answer them once, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that would be good. Yeah, and
I feel if Leslie is not ready to start her meeting because not enough people are here, why should I be handing out all this great information to a minority of people? You're all the early people who've shown up, and I appreciate that.
On time.
But I think we'll say it once.
We're gonna do announcements in 2 minutes.
Okay, so should I do 2 minutes as Jackie Mason? Should I do that?
Yeah, why don't you do some, do some improv.
I have no idea why I'm here. I don't think I should be here. I think I should be someplace else. The fact of the matter is, I don't know any of you people. I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want from me. I have no idea why I'm here. Why am I here, Leslie? Could you answer that for me? Please tell me why I'm here. I don't know.
Because no one else wants to be with you.
You're absolutely 100% correct. I sit here all alone in my basement. I have absolutely no friends. I don't even have enemies anymore. I don't have enemies. I don't have friends. I have a couple of dogs. They don't like me too much, but it's okay. They like me a little bit, maybe not enough. Okay, that's enough of that. Okay, enough of that.
All right. Oh, look, we got someone laughing. All right, we're going to start announcements. I think we have enough people and we're
Okay.
1 minute early. Okay, so we've got about half of you now, but welcome to the special conversation with Michael Fremer, San Francisco Audiophile Foundation Zoom event. This is a very special event. We put it together quickly because Michael has some big news and he's going to talk candidly about the future and exciting stuff. But first we want to do announcements. Just for those of you who have not already created an account on the new website, we would like you to do that. And just keep in mind that your login credentials from the society website do not work on the foundation website. So you have to create a new account. And to encourage you to do so, we are giving you 3 months free trial, after which you will have to pay a whopping $30 a year to join the foundation. And now that we are a 501c3, anything in addition to that you would like to donate to us is now tax deductible. And we also take donations of other things. So is Tony on? I don't know if Tony's on yet, but we have sent out a list of items that we need for our educational initiative. And we've been getting people to donate some of those items as well, which and you can take a deduction on your taxes for. And we also need volunteers. We need a treasurer. We still need a treasurer for the foundation. Michael, how are you with numbers?
I am math flexing,
Okay.
so I'm really
Right.
bad.
You're not going to be our treasurer. But it's not too terrible of a job, but we do need a treasurer. And we are always looking for volunteers for events. We also have a new Instagram account that Grant just set up and he's going to start posting on. We have a new app for Audiophile Foundation on Android and iPhone. So you can download the app now, and we're going to be doing more Facebook as well. So you can follow us on all sorts of social media. The videos, the Zoom videos, if you miss them, we are going to continue to post them on our YouTube channel. And then we have a whole bunch of events coming up. Tony has a DIY event July 17th. Larry, we are confirmed on that, right? That's our next event coming up. Also, Pacific Audio Fest is the end of July. Michael, are you going to that one? Are you going to Pacific Audio Fest?
I'm considering going. I'm trying to get my new employer to see if they will help foot the bill for that. If not, I'll probably foot the bill myself. I don't know. I'm going to try to go.
Okay. Well, we are, a bunch of us are going to go. Larry and Grant and I are going to drive on up from Southern Oregon. And I think we're going to visit Jason when we go up there because he is in that area, see what he's doing. And if you download the app, we are going to set up what's called a channel so we can all communicate. It's kind of like a text messaging using the app. Oh. So if we're all going out somewhere, if we spot Michael Fremer somewhere, we'd say, look, this is where he is. Go bug him. Yeah. So.
Then you can watch me walk into a room at the show, and if they don't pay attention to me, I say, "Do you know who I am?" I never do that.
Exactly.
I never do that. That is the most horrible thing you can possibly do.
After that, August 7th, Gordon Burwell is doing an in-person event at his place. So that should be kind of more of a party, but he's going to talk about his new speakers. We'll be sending out information on that. We have just arranged a spatial audio demonstration, and I think we're going to send out some information on what spatial does. That's going to be in Emeryville on August 13th. And then I think Tony has a bunch of other events after that. We have a John Curl event. I don't know if we have a date for that. But Tony, on the educational side, has events coming up, and we're going to start doing more in-person events there. So lots and lots of exciting things happening at the foundation. So make sure that you register and all become members. And I think we now have 50 people. Anything I missed?
So half the people are no shows. I'm leaving. Okay.
That's not enough people. Anybody, Larry, anything I missed? Is Tony on?
Maybe half of them are out protesting what happened Friday. Maybe some of them are out there in the streets.
They should be doing that.
I don't want to get political here. I don't want to get political, but
Not going out on a limb on that one. So I think we can get going because if anybody does come on late, again, if you miss something, you can catch it on YouTube later. So,
Okay.
All right. So Michael, big question on everybody's minds. What is going on with you? Tell us about your new website and.
All right. So some of you know that in the 1990s, I published a magazine called The Tracking Angle. In fact, my first column in The Absolute Sound, when I first started writing about hi-fi in 1986, was called The Tracking Angle, and that was in The Absolute Sound, which when I wasn't writing for The Absolute Sound, I called The Obsolete Sound, just for the fun of it, because it's okay to have fun with all of this. Right? I will not do that anymore because I write for them now. So now I'll just say I will not mention my previous endeavor. But at any rate, I published this magazine called The Tracking Angle, and I'm very proud of it. It was really a nice magazine. It was a full color glossy. We were up to about 15,000 subscribers by the end. It started out very small, and we stopped it because after 4 years, the record industry at that point was not interested in helping us because we were talking about physical media, and as far as they were concerned, physical media was perfectly safe and they didn't need help from us. And I was talking about vinyl, and of course vinyl was going away and they weren't interested in what we had to say. But anyway, after 4 years of publishing this magazine, the people we had talked to in the record business said, okay, we'll support you with advertising now because you're a real magazine and you're growing. And then the great record business consolidation happened, and all the people we were talking to disappeared. And so my partners and I said, you know what, we'll give this up. So we gave it up. And that was very disappointing, but it had to happen. So I started writing for my previous endeavor in 1995 after I quit The Absolute Sound for which will be a great story in my book. It's a hilarious story that I've told to some people, but I'm not going to tell it here. And I started writing for Stereophile, my previous endeavor. And, I'll always be indebted to John Atkinson for hiring me because, I'm loyal to people to a fault, as some people know. So when I worked for The Absolute Sound, I was very loyal to The Absolute Sound, to the point where when my previous endeavors, CES party happened every year, the whole industry was invited and they all went, but I was blocked at the door as the only person not allowed in because of how loyal I was to The Absolute Sound. But anyway, despite that, John Atkinson hired me, and I'll always be indebted to John. In fact, I am going to be roasting him at the LA and Orange County Audio Society gala in December, and that'll be fun. And I wrote it on the plane on the way back from Nashville. It came to my head what to do, and it's going to be absolutely hilarious. I was laughing on the plane as I was thinking of the gags, and people thought they may want to get to a different seat, but there were no other seats on the plane. So at any rate, so I wrote for my previous endeavor from 1995 till 2010. And in 2005, I started a website called musicangle.com. And I did that because I wanted to have a website of my own, and I was a freelancer at my previous endeavor. And so I built musicangle.com, and it was growing nicely and generated a good amount of income for me. And it was all about records and music and not about hi-fi equipment. I promised my previous endeavors executives that I would not compete with them to review hi-fi equipment on musicangle.com, and I didn't. But then I started writing for other audio magazines. I wrote for the Audio Beat, and I wrote for a few others, and I promised my previous endeavor that I would not review hi-fi equipment, so I didn't. I did interviews, I did factory tours, like I visited Shunyata, that was interesting, and things like that. But my previous endeavor decided that they didn't like all of that, and they said that I was diluting my brand. And I said, you're right, I'm diluting my brand, and I'm actually concentrating my bank account, which I like. So at that point, they said, we will make this offer to you. We will buy your website for a fair amount of money, and we will make you an employee of the company. And I had never been an employee of a company. So they made me a very, very good offer that my accountant negotiated for me, because I'm one of the 3 Jews in the world born without the business gene. So I had no idea how to do this. So my accountant worked this deal out. And he was also one of the producers of the Concert for Bangladesh. And he also was a friend of George Harrison. And he also manages David Bromberg. So he's in this business, actually. How I got to become his client is a whole nother story that I won't tell. That'll be in my book. But at any rate, he made this deal. It was a very, very good deal for me. So I sold my website and became an employee, and they built for me. Well, they built me a website, which I developed and named my previous endeavor, which many of you know. And it was a very successful website. I'm very proud of that website. And at the same time, I started a YouTube channel with that name. And that wasn't part of my deal. And I did that on my own to build my brand. Plus, I love being on camera, and I'm a ham. So that YouTube channel has 52,000 subscribers. And after 10 years of that, I kind of grew restless and decided that what I want to do is start my own website so I can do what I want to do on my own website, and probably continue working for my previous endeavor. But things for me, you know, when you're in a relationship and things start to not turn, they start to turn like, this was great, and maybe it's not so great anymore. And it was becoming difficult for me. And you know, this is not a problem for me to say, but last year, when the product of the year were announced to my previous endeavor, nothing I reviewed won any product of the year. And I reviewed in the analog domain the OMA turntable and the Air Force Zero, 2 products that really should, one of those 2 products should have been product of the year in the analog domain. They were both incredible steps upward in vinyl playback. Neither one won anything. Nor did the Wilson XVX. That was another product that really should have been up there, but that didn't win either. Even though Martin Collins, and if you know Martin Collins, he's been reviewing audio in the UK for decades and decades. And Martin is one of these very reserved British guys, and he never goes out of his way to become crazy enthused. Well, he reviewed those speakers and he became crazy enthused. Anyway, and I also reviewed a $684 phono preamp that is phenomenal. That didn't win either. So I started feeling that I don't really belong there anymore. So all this happened at the same time. And I ran this one by my wife, because she's very cautious. She's more cautious than Leslie is. And a reviewer in my previous endeavor described the turntables that I reviewed as oligarch turntables, and with my name attached. I said, this is not, what is going on here? Why, you know, with Putin just invaded Ukraine and I'm reviewing oligarch turntables? And that's when I decided I'm going to go out on my own. So the tracking angle is now partly built. And at the same time, I did have a meeting with my former employer, the Absolute Sound, and they made me a very enticing offer that's generous in the sense that we're going to share videos. They really understand the web and social media and videos. And so the new endeavor, the tracking angle, is going to share videos with the Absolute Sound, and I'm going to be producing videos for the Absolute Sound, and they are going to allow me to share them on my website. It's a win-win for everybody. And so I'm really excited about this. It's just going to start now. And one of the things I'm going to be doing, and I'll tell you about it, is some of you know Andre Jennings at the Absolute Sound. He's a technically, I don't have any degrees in mechanical engineering or anything like that, but I've learned a lot from people who know this stuff, and I think I regurgitated pretty well. Well, Andre is an engineer, and so we're going to be doing 6 times a year, we're going to be doing a webcast or a video thing that's going to be called My Lunch with Andre, named after a movie, My Dinner with Andre. And we're going to talk about analog related things from the technical side, from his point of view, and from my point of view. And I'm really looking forward to that as well. So, and I have a YouTube channel that's up already. It's the Tracking Angle YouTube channel. So I've gone from 52,000 subscribers to about 200 subscribers. And this is what happens. You know, it's going to take a while for this to build itself up. But I'm fully confident that the 52,000 subscribers that are there will find the Tracking Angle site, and they will join me there. I mean, I'm going to be publishing a great video from the Nashville Making Vinyl event that I was at last week. And once that video is up, I think it'll attract a lot of people. So that's what's happening with me. Now, was I too forward, Leslie?
No, you're fine. I have a question. If anybody has questions, again, send in questions. So what will you do differently with the tracking angle? What are you going to do now? You're going to spread your wings. You're going to do whatever you want, right?
Okay, the tracking angle is going to be pretty much the same as my previous endeavor. In my previous endeavor, we reviewed a lot of music, interviewed recording engineers and mastering engineers and various people. We covered shows. I'll be doing that as well. And we reviewed moderately priced equipment. We never reviewed expensive equipment on my previous endeavor, because when you look at the numbers of who wants to read about expensive gear on the site, the more expensive it was, the fewer people wanted to watch it or be engaged with it. So, you know, the turntables were project debut carbons, up to $5,000 or $8,000 turntables. That was the most that we would cover. Inexpensive cartridges, inexpensive DACs. You know, I reviewed the Shit Manny 2 on my previous endeavor recently. It got a lot of traffic. And there are also 12 writers that I had on my previous endeavor. They're all coming with me. And there's some really good writers. I have 2 young people writing for me. Malachi Alou, who is 16 years old now, who is a great writer by any stretch, regardless of age. He really is a great writer. And he likes Kanye West. And so that inflamed a lot of readers. Fine, don't read his review of Kanye West. That's fine. And I have this kid, Nathan Zeller, who's 17, who's reviewing music and audio gear. And to me, mentoring these young people and having them become good writers is a real pleasure. And I have a guy named Joe Washek, who is 60 years old, which, you know, for me is still a youngster. And Joe was actually a fan of mine when I was on the radio in Boston in the 70s. So it's kind of cool that he's come on board. And he's an attorney, and he's written all these great columns called Records You Didn't Know You Needed to Have That You Do Need to Have. And those were really popular. And I have an attorney who's a prosecutor in Georgia writing for me stories that have a legal bent to them. And Fred Kaplan, who wrote for my previous endeavor, is joining me. I've known Fred for 40 years. He wrote for the Absolute Sound, and then he was at my previous endeavor. And he asked if he could join my team if I was able to pay him what he was getting at my previous endeavor. And I decided I could. It's worth it to make that investment. So I'm excited by the people I have writing for me. I have a great story on ska and reggae music that's we're ready to be published as soon as the site is finished. And we're building a really, really good site. It's a robust, modern looking site. It's not going to look like a WordPress thing. It's going to really be nice. And it's costing money, but it's okay. I'm really excited by all of this. It's given me a new lease on, I don't want to say lease on life, because life was good before, but it's given me a new sense of excitement. And you know, the deal I negotiated with my partners was helped along by my nephew, who is the CEO of Activision Blizzard. And so he was negotiating selling his company to Microsoft for like $60 billion or whatever. And so he gave me some really good tips on negotiating a deal with my partners, things I never would have thought of on my own, but he came up with. And so it's a good deal for my partners. He's much more generous than I would have been in the way the deal was structured, but it's going to really work. If everything works out well and the numbers come out to be what I think they're going to be, it'll be both financially rewarding for them and for me, and it'll give me the freedom to write what I want to write. And you know, I recommend to everybody, if you're getting stuck in a rut with what you're doing, you know, break free and try something else. So we'll see.
And I think
And I'm not, I
great.
didn't, let me just say, some people were speculating that I had to quit my previous endeavor because the people from Unzau, the company that makes the stick your stylus in the goo company, were suing me because of an article that I published, but that's not true. So.
Well,
Okay.
I think a lot of times to really grow, you do have to break out and try something completely different. But now you're an owner, right? You're actually going to own your work product, correct?
Yes, that's correct. I own Tracking Angle, and my partners don't own it, but they get a good percentage of the advertising revenue, and they're building it. And we also have a very good contract there that was negotiated by a very good attorney who is a fan of mine. So I was able to hire him for a reasonable amount of money. You know, fans are amazing. You know, in last November, a fan invited me to Abu Dhabi for the F1. I mean, how crazy is that?
That's a good fan.
I mean, he doesn't even have a turntable. And I flew on a private jet to Abu Dhabi, and this guy runs the whole healthcare system in Abu Dhabi. And this is during COVID, you know, and so we were checked out every place we went. We had to get tested. I had more stuff up my nose that month than the entire 1970s, if you know what I'm saying.
All right. Does anybody else have questions?
I did get I did get COVID, and I got it in the UK when I went to the SME factory, and I got the worst COVID variant that you can possibly get. I got COVID MQA. You get COVID and it unfolds diphtheria and Peyronie's disease in your body, but it's okay. It's all straightened out now. It's not a problem. That's another great joke, but it only works among audiophiles. So.
Yeah. Okay. Does anyone else have questions? I'm not seeing anything in the chat, so I don't know if maybe people are sending them just to you, Michael. But if you do, please chime in. Now, you wanted to talk about the event you just went to.
Well, I just want to say that, you know, I bought these Wilson XVXs, and as you can see, this speaker is stuffed in the corner of my room. It's stuffed. You can barely connect the wires to the terminals because it's stuffed in the corner. And people see this and they go, that can't possibly work. Well, if it didn't work, I wouldn't have bought them. But it works incredibly well. I get 20 hertz in the room, no boom. It works. So I'll say that. And I bought those speakers because I had the money, thank God, because, you know, I was an expert witness in the Quincy Jones versus the estate of Michael Jackson trial. And that was, you know, really stupid money that I got. It wasn't smart money, actually, because the guy hired me for a good reason. And I nailed it in the courtroom. And that story is on my previous endeavors YouTube channel. But I'm going to take that and put it on my current YouTube channel, because as far as I'm concerned, I own that. It's me. I did that. It wasn't like something I did for my previous endeavor. I was hired by this guy. I did this thing. They don't own me. And I'm going to put that up there. And my lawyer said, that one, my lawyer said to me, you know, you have a good case for why those videos are all yours. And they have a good case also why they own them. So if you want to go to court and litigate all of that and lose all your money and maybe win and maybe not, then do. But I think it's pretty stupid. So don't do that. Leave those videos up there at your previous endeavor. We'll talk about each one that you think you're entitled to have. And like I did take with me on my new YouTube channel, if you go on there and watch the animation, it's a cool animation. I did take, don't sneak into your room like that. I know what you got behind your back, records, more new records. Well, I wrote that and did that voiceover in the 1970s. So I own it. So I'm proceeding with caution about what I can take and not take. Anyway, I had the money to buy these speakers and I got an accommodation price. Sorry, but it was a dealer cost. It was a lot of money. And my wife came down and listened to Little Feet and she turned around and said, oh my God, you have to buy these. And I said, okay. So I did. Anyway.
That's actually an amazing thing that your wife said that. But, and so we heard your system and it sounded pretty amazing, even though I think the speakers it feels like they take up about 90% of your room. So
Right.
Between the speakers and the records, there's very little space for people in there. So I'd say very, very intimate. So you have a couple questions.
Yeah.
Did you see them?
So one thing I am really not great at is if people say, give me a list of blankety blanks, give me 5. Okay. Somebody wants a great record that is from a digital file. So I've got a bunch of them over there. I can go over and get the Bill Frisell. It's called Valentine, I think it's called. It's really wonderful. It's cut from a digital file. And why it sounds better than the file when you stream it, I don't know, but it does. Is it a distortion? I don't know. But mastering guys I talk to say there's some kind of magic when you cut a lacquer, that whole process, it's another plugin. And look at it as another plugin. It does something to the source that makes it sound wonderful. That's all. So did Bill Pugh set up your XVXs? Bill Pugh set them up, and yes, he did come and set them up. And then Peter McGrath came over and later and double checked everything. What happened is I reviewed the Estelon Forzas, really nice loudspeaker, for my previous endeavor. And in order to do that, these had to be moved out of the way. These things weigh 684 pounds. So it's not an easy move. So we jacked them up, we put them on, we didn't put them on wheels, actually. You can do that, but rather than do that, Wilson makes these sliding discs that you can put under the spikes. And so what you do is you jack it up and you spray the bottom with silicone spray, and then you put the spike into the center of this disc, and then you can actually push them. So we had to push them out of the way and bring in the Estelon Forzas, which have no square parts. It's all around. You have to like dance with the speaker. It looks obscene, but you're dancing with it and moving it and rolling it. And once that was in place, I reviewed them and then moved them out of the way. And then we had to push these speakers, the XVXs, back in place. And getting it exactly aligned was tricky, but I did. And then Peter McGrath happened to be in town. He came over and double checked everything, and that's how that happened. What was the first LP that you ever purchased? The first LP, okay, and 45. First LP I ever purchased was the Kingston Trio at Large. And it's when the album came out. And I remember where I was when I bought it, which was at Hillcrest Music Store, where I also failed as a trumpet player. And I also failed as a guitarist, but I took lessons later and got better. And the first 45 I bought was Mac the Knife by Bobby Darin. That I remember. What type of reviews will you be doing at the Absolute Sound? I'll be doing equipment reviews, and I'll be doing probably the same kind of stuff I was doing at the previous endeavor, which is the more costly gear. And that's why I like having the website, because I can do the costly gear on the website, on the at the Absolute Sound, and I can do the budget gear, the more affordable gear, the non-oligarch gear on the website. And I like doing both. I really do. So that's what I'm going to be doing. And I'll be doing show reports. I'll be, we're going to mix and match. That, the deal I struck with them is so open. We're going to do mix and match things. So I'm also going to be doing 6 factory tours a year for the Absolute Sound. So the first one I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Nagra factory. The 5th of July, I'm flying over to Switzerland to go to the Nagra factory, and that should be fun. I like doing factory tours. You learn a lot about a company by their factory. So like if you just visit a factory and you go into the listening room and they have like 3 records and 5 CDs, that tells you something about that company. In Munich, they asked me to bring records and unusual records to play in the room. So I played records for an hour and a half in the Nagra room, and that was really fun. I brought lacquers, and I brought new releases that aren't out yet, and I brought some original pressings, and told stories and played records for an hour and a half, and it was really fun. And Renee from Nagra, when it was over, he came up to me and said, I'm going to remember that for the rest of my life. That was, when someone says that to you, it's nice, you know?
Don't let it go to your head, Michael.
I won't. You know what? I think they're pretty down to earth. I don't.
No, you are.
People meet me at shows and they're surprised I don't put on airs. I'm pretty much down to earth.
You actually are. And we do want to get you out again, so you could do that for us too. You could bring your records. So we're gonna try to have an in-person event and fly you on out here.
I was at the Capitol Audio Fest talking with a guy named Matthew Klott, who was a recording engineer. I mean, he's actually a surgeon, not a recording engineer. Sean Murphy is a recording engineer. Matthew Klott is a surgeon, and so he came over here to hear the XVX, and he writes for the Absolute Sound. But we're all friends. You know, there's this idea that, well, if you write for another magazine, you can't be friends with people. But I'm friends with people that write for all magazines, and so I met Matthew at Cap Audio Fest, and we're standing in the hallway, and some guy comes up to me, puts his hand on my shoulder, and he goes, "Mikey, you've changed my life." And then he turned and walked away. And Matthew said, "Damn, I'm a surgeon, and no one's ever said that to me." Don't ask me, but that's true. So,
a bunch of questions that are piling up here.
Should I answer more questions?
Well, you have like 10 questions. You got to pick.
Okay.
Pick whichever one you want. You've got quite a few. They keep coming in.
As an opposite approach to your Wilson XVXs, any thoughts on the fairly recent improvements to full-range wideband driver speakers offered up by Cube and Voxative and others? You know, I've heard the Voxative speakers at a variety of shows, and that's one speaker that's like one driver that actually sounded very good. Like I liked it, but I'm not. You know, if you listen to a speaker with multiple drivers like I have that are stacked one on top of the other 9 feet away, the skeptics come over and they look at it and go, "That can't possibly work." And then they sit down and they listen, and it works great. I had JJ French, the guitarist for Twisted Sister. So he is a very smart man, and he also used to sell hi-fi at Lyric Hi-Fi. So, you know, he put on this act, but he's a very smart guy. And he came over with somebody from Magico, and they came over and they sat and we played records and we had a good time. And the next day he called me up and he said, "Fremer, I hate your blanket guts. I hate you." And he started screaming and yelling at me because the system sounded so good. But that's how heavy metal guitarists react to a good sound. Anyway, that was just a funny story. Another funny story. And then Frank Doris, my friend Frank, Frank Doris and I go back to the Absolute Sound days, to the 1980s. He says, "I thought I was the only one who was also hip to the Bill Evans' You Must Believe in Spring album. Apparently not, based on your recent review." I didn't review it yet, Frank. I haven't reviewed it yet, but because I don't have any place to review it for the time being. But how much better is it than the original? It's so Doug Sachs. This was an Al Schmidt. Al Schmidt was one of the great engineers, and I'm so happy I got to meet Al Schmidt before he passed away at 90. And Al Schmidt went to my high school, as it turned out. And Al Schmidt engineered this one. A lot of people complain about Rudy Van Gelder recordings, his recording of the piano. Well, Al Schmidt recorded this Bill Evans album, and the piano sounds phenomenal. And is this better than the original? Well, they crammed a lot of information onto one LP, and Doug Sachs did a great job mastering it. And the double 45, spreads it out more, and the tape is still in great shape, and it sounds great. It's worth getting the double 45. I promise you, they did a really good job with it. Let's see. Should you get it? Yes. Get it and run down to your listening room. Oh, I just got it, but haven't yet a chance to play it. So take a break, Frank. All the stories I'm going to tell because I've been telling them for 40 years to you. So take a break, go down and listen, come back, and then tell people how it sounds to you. Might be a good idea. So I thought you did. I'm not even into my second beer of the night. I may have told you about it, in a conversation. But, I just wanted to say meeting Al Schmidt I met Al Schmidt at the power station a couple of years ago, and he was recording a Lynn Stanley record. And he said to me, and Al Schmidt had a very distinctive voice, and it was kind of like, "Hey, listen, Fremer, when you come to California, give me a call." And he gave me his card. And so when people say, when you come to California, give me a call, and they give you their card, 9 chances out of 10, when you call them, they go, "Who are you? What do you want from me?" But when I got to California, I called Al, and he remembered me and invited me over to Capitol Studios, where he was mixing Bob Dylan's Frank Sinatra record. And he invited me into the studio, and I got to hear part of that record being mixed. And then Bob Dylan was right outside, and I walked out when Bob Dylan walked past me, and I wanted to go, "Bob, hey Bob," but I didn't. I withheld. I just said, passed him by, and that was a great experience, and really happy I got to meet Al Schmidt. Oh, the last time I saw you speak at one of these events, you played a record. I need new glasses. You played a record that was the inspiration for John Williams' Star Wars soundtrack. Can you please remind us of what that was? Yes, that was Eric Wolfgang Korngold's recording of King's Row, starring Ronald Reagan. And if I played that for you, you can hear where John Williams took that from and got the music from Star Wars. You can probably stream that now. But it was the overture to King's Row, starring Ronald Reagan. Yeah. Anyway, Frank says, you can tell as many embarrassing stories about the bad old days as you want. I can take it. Frank can take it. No, the story of how I ended up resigning from the Absolute Sound is a really funny story that I'm going to save from my book. But I will tell you that when Harry Pearson got married to another guy at a time when it really wasn't yet accepted. It wasn't legal, actually, but he did it. And I was proud of him and happy to be supportive of him. And what I did was I sung "The Look of Love" with a blonde wig on. I sang "The Look of Love" to the backing track of the song that I have. And that was fun. Remember that, Frank? That was really fun. And I was standing with Harry Weissel, and Harry Weissel went, "I can't believe I'm standing next to 2 guys getting married." He's a little more conservative than I am. I think he's come around since then, but was that okay, Leslie, to tell that? Was it okay? Because yeah. Leslie, good. Leslie, she cautioned me before.
I need to keep everything PG here.
It's being recorded,
Yes.
But will you be covering some vintage gear for us seniors who still listen and enjoy what we have? By the way, I'm a longtime KT3 fan also. I reviewed 2 sets of hearing aids on my previous endeavor, if you don't know that. And the first one I reviewed because my mother-in-law needed some hearing aids, and she's 95. And Zvox kept advertising hearing aids, and I know the guy from Zvox. I said, "Why don't you send me these hearing aids. Let me give a listen to them." And actually, I had a guy down here, an 85-year-old guy came here. He was actually with his wife, and my wife was having a dog club meeting upstairs. And he came, and he had nothing to do. And I said, I'd like you to come downstairs and listen to my stereo. And I see you wearing 2 hearing aids. I want you to, this is about 15 years ago, I want you to tell me what you hear on my stereo when you're listening to music through your hearing aids. And he came down, he never heard a good stereo. When he came down, and I played him a record, and he went, "Oh my God." He says, "It's like all the instruments are floating in space. I can hear each instrument. I hear the bass line. He heard everything that we all hear when we listen to our stereos." And he had 2 hearing aids in his ears. And that told me that, you can get older and have your hearing go south and still enjoy your stereo. So then when my mother-in-law needed hearing aids, I had these Zvoxes in, and I put them on, and it wasn't great because they were inexpensive hearing aids, but I could still hear that. It's kind of like a subwoofer. You dial in your subwoofer, and you only want to know it's there when you turn it off, and then you hear what's missing. But it wasn't a fantastic experience, but I bought them for her, and she uses them, and it's good for her. Then, because I had that on my previous endeavors website, I got a call from a company called Widex, and they make a high-end hearing aid that costs, it was $4,000 to $6,000 for this hearing aid. And the special thing about this hearing aid, ironically, in the analog era of hearing aids were very good for musicians because there was no latency, there was no pause in between the time that the sound gets into the hearing aid and it gets digitized and then gets spit out into your ears. It was like in real time because it was basically a little, like an amplifier. Once it was a digital situation, there was a long latency period between the time that the signal gets to the hearing aid device, gets digitized, and gets to your ear. And that messed up phase and time, and everything sounded not good for musicians. So this company, Widex, came up with a hearing aid where the latency time was like 0.2 milliseconds, a very, very short time. And so they offered them to me to review, and I got them, and I had an audiologist. It was COVID had happened by that point. So the audiologist did the test over the internet, and she tested my hearing, and she said, so your hearing is good to about 14K, which, listen, I'm 75 years old. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I can hear burglar alarms at 20K because I can't. But, a cymbal is like 7K. So my top end is still good. I'm confident in what I hear. And, I know a lot of mastering engineers who are older guys, and they're in the same position, and they're still mastering records for younger guys. And as far as they're concerned, if the younger guys say, yeah, the mastering job you did is great, they're confident in what they're doing, and I'm confident in what I'm doing. And when it gets to the point where someone says, you heard what from that piece of gear? I don't hear that. Then I'll start worrying about it. But anyway, so I got these Widex hearing aids, and I put them in, and you can make all kinds of adjustments to the frequency range. You can adjust a whole bunch of things. And you use like little ear things in your ear that are open. So the sound comes in, and you're adding whatever it is that the program tells you you're missing. And frankly, it was a very, very good experience. And I then heard from a lot of people who read the review and bought those hearing aids and told me that they can now listen to music again through their stereo, and they're really grateful that they tried that. And once these things are in your, it's like I wear glasses. I don't notice that I'm wearing glasses. Once these things were in my ear, they're very small and they were very comfortable. And this was like 2 summers ago, and it got really hot. I decided to go for a swim. I actually got on the diving board. I was about to jump off the diving board when I realized I had them in my ear. So I didn't use them all the time when I listen to music, but some things actually did, like some synthesized music sounded better, and classical music didn't quite sound as good. But when I get to the point where I really need these things, I'm confident that I'll buy them and still be able to listen to music and enjoy it. I will not be reviewing hi-fi equipment at that point. So I think I've got like 5 more years to go before that happens. Maybe, I don't know. But I don't lie about it. I just people say, why are you telling this to people? Because I don't care. Everything's good now. And the feedback I get from readers, it tells me that I'm still capable of doing this job. So, okay. Is there any way to research if a pressing is good, clean before buying and playing it? No. It's like people, they like to buy sealed old records, a sealed original pressing. I'd rather buy a record that's been opened and inspected and auditioned before I buy it, rather than a sealed old record. You don't know what you're getting. But I will say, if you ever sell records on Discogs, make sure that you include in your thing that you don't take any returns, because there are people that are absolutely insane on Discogs. Like I sold an original, a mint reissue of Nilsson Schmilsson, or maybe it was Nilsson, a little Nilsson Schmilsson in the night, whatever it was. It was a test pressing on Audio Fidelity Records. And that was a label owned by Marshall Blonstein. Some of you know that. And Marshall handed me this test pressing. And I had it sitting in my library for a decade or so. And I just never got around to playing it. And I will not sell promo records of labels that are still in business. Like I get promo records from Mobile Fidelity. I get them from Analog Productions. I will never sell those. But this was sitting there and I didn't need it anymore. And I went on Discogs and it was going for $125. What I need is shelf space. I'm literally out of shelf space. So I put it on Discogs and I said, mint minus, it's really mint. I played it once. I cleaned it and played it once. It sounded fine to me, and sold it. And the guy got back to me and said, I'd rate it at best very good. Very good? What do you mean? Well, there was a little bit of dirt on it when I took it out of the sleeve. And, there's a little bit of surface noise. I said, look, you know why they call it a test pressing? Because it's a test. And maybe this test pressing didn't pass the test. And that's why he gave it to me. So yeah, there's a little bit of surface noise on it, but it's a mint minus record. But I'll give you your money back. Another time I sold a Notorious B.I.G. record, sealed record, double record in a single jacket. That's how it was sold. And it was, it had shrink wrap on it. And yeah, if you look at that record, the two records, the rim of the record was like protruding in the jacket because it was two records in a single jacket. But he said it was ringware and he wanted his money back. And I gave him his money back. But I will never sell a record on Discogs ever again where there's a refund, no refunds. So did it take time for your ear brain to get used to the Widex? No, it was like instantaneous. It was like I put them in, and once I set the level correctly, I didn't know they were there. It was very impressive, actually. Most today, most hearing aids today are focused on understanding voice. Well, there are different within the app. There are different settings. You can set it for voice, and you can pump up the mid range. Where voices are, because that's where most people lose. They have a dip in the mid range before their top end goes. There's a dip in the mid range, and that's where voices become difficult to hear. But also, actors today mumble. There's no doubt in my mind. If you go back and watch movies, why is it that if I go back and watch movies from the 1930s, you can understand every word they are saying because they enunciate clearly and they speak on a kind of level vocal range because most of them came out of the theater where you have to project. So they did movies and it sounds the same way. Now you watch movies and people project, they talk like this because they want to sound real. But
Michael, on that point, this is interesting. So my kids watch a lot of movies. And people mumble so much in movies. They actually they use the subtitles all the time.
Yes.
They can't understand what people are saying. And they have perfect hearing. So
that's right.
It's not us, it's the movies.
It's the movies. And then also,
Yeah.
of course, the cameras are shaking all the time. It's like, and it's on purpose. They purposely shake the camera. You know why? Because the acting is so bad that unless they shake the camera, you totally disengage. That's my theory. So.
Okay. There's a lot of hearing aid questions, which is interesting. I actually went to the doctor to see if I could get hearing aids because I thought it would be just fun to have, to be able to tweak the sound. And they tested my hearing and they said, we refuse to give you hearing aids. Your hearing is too good. So
good for you.
I couldn't even get any. But I did think it was a cool idea to like have bionic ears.
Yes, then you have definitely, yeah. The issue, the bigger issue I have now is when I'm on an airplane, after 5 or 6 hours on an airplane, and the combination of the roar that's in the background and the pressure, it takes me a while to get back to where I can sit and listen to music again. I can't just run downstairs after I get back from a flight like that and play music and enjoy it. It takes a few hours to settle down. What about headphones versus hearing aids? Is one's hearing? Okay, so it's funny because Robert Greene, who writes for the Absolute Sound, is one of the people that I imitate. I imitate a lot of people in the industry, and they don't like it, but Robert, what Robert says, well, your stereo is like a hearing aid. You make it louder, and then you can hear everything good. That's probably true. Just play it a little louder. Okay, let's see. So there's no way to research if a pressing is good clean before buying and playing it, if it's sealed, obviously. If it's an open record, you can look and see, what pressing plant it came from and have a pretty good idea. There are certain pressing plants that are better than others. And so if you know how to read the intermatrix codes, you'll know an optimal pressing from an RTI pressing, from a URP pressing, from a MPO pressing. Yeah, you can tell, and certain pressing plants are better than others. So I was at Nashville Record Pressing, and I was at Making Vinyl in Nashville last week, and I'm putting together a long video on that, but I didn't talk about this, but it was really exciting to be down there because Tennessee is now going to be the center of vinyl record pressing in America. And so you have United Record Pressing, which, all right, so like 10 years ago at Expona, I was on a panel discussion, and it was an amphitheater, it was a big audience, and someone got up and said, what's the worst pressing plant in America and what's the best pressing plant in America? And at that point, I said, the best pressing plant in America is RTI in Camarillo. It's a boutique pressing plant with 10 SMT presses. They press the best records. And the worst pressing plant is United Record Pressing in Nashville. Those are easily the worst records. And Mark Michaels, who had just bought United Record Pressing, was in the audience. So he was not happy with me, as you can imagine. And if I was Mark Michaels, I would not be happy with me either. But that's fine. But now I went down to his pressing plant last week, and they moved into a big, huge facility. I did not realize how big that place is now. They are adding 40 presses to meet the demand. They're adding 40 Phoenix Alphas, which are the Swedish presses, and they've got about 20 of them there now. They're taking all of their older, they bought all of Rainbow's presses. So, Rainbow was in California and they closed down. So Mark bought all of Rainbow's presses, their lead presses, and they're refurbishing all the presses. They're refurbishing all the SMTs they have, and they're updating all of them to the most modern technology possible. So it's all microprocessor controlled. They've built all new boilers. They put all new steam facilities in, all new piping, all new electricity. They have a whole new plating facility. He's investing big bucks into that place. And I'm hopeful and confident that they're going to bring their pressing quality up to the level of the best pressing plants in America. Now, some of the other pressing plants that were at the event are skeptical. They're kind of a little bit, I'll say they're a little bit, they're either jealous or they're cynical or they're threatened. But I don't see why, with the investments that Mark is making there, that he can't bring the pressing plant up to the best there is. And he's completely changed the workflow. He hired a guy from Sony who was involved in Blu-ray and CD manufacturing, which is a whole different kind of manufacturing, but a lot of the techniques are the same, actually, if you learn about that. And so he's making the investment. And I think the biggest bottleneck, and I discussed this in the first panel discussion that I moderated, is what the state of Tennessee needs to do, I mean, aside from legalizing abortion, is, I'm sorry I said that, what they need to do is begin a course. They have to invest in a course at the community colleges in record pressing and becoming a pressman, because there is no course in that. There is no formalized way of learning that. So what ends up happening is they hire people, they teach them one at a time on these presses, and it's terribly inefficient. What they need to do is have a community college course so that you can have like 30 people in a room and teach them all about record pressing, and then bring them into the plant and give them hands-on experience and certify them as press people. Don't you think that's a good idea? Everybody there thought it was a really good idea. So that's
a fantastic idea.
The state of Tennessee has to invest in it, along with giving women help in child rearing. And I'm sorry, I'm getting political. But,
okay. But we are actually, we've heard that across the industry is there's not enough engineers, there's not enough repair people. There are not enough people just to address our high-end audio needs in general. So yeah, we're going to try to change that, because we have heard a lot of manufacturers saying, look, I just don't have someone who could build this.
Yeah.
Right.
So the first panel that I moderated. It was the first panel of the event. This event was held at the Vinyl Lab, which is a boutique pressing plant in Nashville, and they've got one Phoenix Alpha press. And while we had this 40 or 50 people that were there, at this event, to the left of us was a Phoenix Alpha press pressing records, and you could take a break and go watch them press records. It was really cool. So the first panel that I moderated was called Pressing Records While Pressing Plants Are at Capacity. How to deal with pressing records while all the pressing plants are at capacity. And this is a big problem for everybody. So, for example, Chad Cassim at QRP is pressing this Verve Impulse series, which are really great. If you've got some of those, you know how good those are. So, Universal Music gives him an order of 20,000 copies of Johnny Hartman and John Coltrane. So he puts that on the press and he's pressing them. Meanwhile, they're back ordered on Love Supreme, and they want 10 more thousand copies of that. But Chad can't press that for them because he's got 20,000 copies of Johnny Hartman and John Coltrane to press. And when they started doing this series, they were pressing 10,000 copies. Now it's up to like 30,000 copies. And what do you do in those situations? So that was the first panel that I moderated, which was really a lot of fun. And they had Mark Michaels was on there from the big pressing plant perspective, and Piper Payne was on there from the one press perspective. And it was a very good panel. And before I did that, Larry Jaffe, who runs, and Brian, a guy named Brian Ekus, those are the two guys who founded Making Vinyl. They got up and they introduced me, and they were nice enough to say that I was the best moderator that they have. So, and I'm telling you these things because that's what they said, and I'm okay with that. If you think I'm being obnoxious by telling you that, that's fine, but that's what they said. It was nice. And then when it was over, Don McGinnis got up from RTI, and he said that panel that I ran and the comments that were made by the people was the best panel that Making Vinyl had ever had, and he's been to all of them, and that was very nice too. And then I gave Don a check for $100 for his comment. But anyway, so it was a very good event. Anyway, then I went to I snuck out and went over to URP, and I'm going to post. I can't post a video because Mark would not let me shoot video there because the whole plant's being rearranged. But he did let me shoot stills, and the guy who got hired from Sony took me through the factory, and I'm going to post a bunch of stills showing you what's happening at URP, and I think it'll be interesting. And then I came back, and then that night I went over to Nashville Record Pressing, which is a new pressing plant that's going up, and they have a big facility, and that one is owned by GZ Media in the Czech Republic. And so all the bigwigs from GZ flew over for this, so they were all there. And this is a very big facility. They're going to have a large number of presses and a big distribution hub there as well. So between that and Memphis Record Pressing, which is another GZ subsidiary in Memphis, and I'm going to go there later in the summer, they're adding like 25 or 30 presses. So between Nashville Record Pressing, Memphis Record Pressing, URP adding 40 presses, Rick Hashimoto's pressing plant in Camarillo, which is funded by Rick, his son, and Jim Davis from Mobile Fidelity Music Direct. So they're going to press the MoFi records there. However, Rick made it very clear that this pressing plant is not Mobile Fidelity's pressing plant. They're going to press other people's records there as well. So between all of that and RTI and QRP and all these boutique pressing plants that are opening, there's one in Austin, Texas. There's Hand Drawn. There's all these, one in Asheville, North Carolina. Between all of these presses and all these pressing plants, I'm quite confident that within a year, we're all going to catch up to record pressing, and you'll be able to order a record and get it within a reasonable period of time. And this is not going away. It's getting bigger and bigger. And, if you had told me this, I talk to Joe Harley, tone poet, all the time. And the two of us would just say, did we ever expect it to get this big? No. Did we ever expect it to be driven by young people? No, but it is. But I said back in the 80s, I said, I think as vinyl goes away if young people can get to hear this experience, they'd want it. And that's what's happened. And, I was telling you before that I went to Abu Dhabi for the F1, which was incredible. And I brought files from my turntable to play for this guy that invited me. And he's a 40-year-old Chinese guy who lives there, and he runs Abu Dhabi's healthcare system, basically. He's way up in the food chain. And that's how I got to go, because it turns out my passport was actually going to expire in 5 months, and you have to have a 6-month passport to travel overseas. And he pulled some strings. That's how powerful he is. And I went over there, and we put my stick in his drive and uploaded everything to Order Nirvana. He uses Order Nirvana, and started playing these vinyl rips. And he turned to me and he said, "I've never heard anything like that. That's unbelievable. That sounds better than why is that?" I said, "I don't know, but enjoy them." And after I got home, WhatsApp, whatever that app is where you can talk to people. He said, "My wife and I sit here and we just sit and play your files from vinyl. That's what we love doing. I've got to get a turntable now." So now he's going to get a turntable. I don't know why that is, but it is. Any more questions?
Quite a few.
Okay. Why don't people ask me questions? I don't want to read.
Oh, okay. Well, Frank made a comment. Decades ago, Fred Campos speculated that vinyl may in fact be the most permanent archival medium. Care to comment?
Oh, so okay, before I get to that, let's talk about the lacquer. Well, it's related. The lacquer shortage, someone asks. So when the Apollo Transco fire happened, the lacquer flow dropped precipitously, and everybody was worried about getting lacquers. But there's a company in Japan that has stepped up to the plate, and now nobody is complaining that they can't get lacquers. And the quality of these lacquers from Japan is very, very good. And there was a company called Transco, and they were in Elizabeth, New Jersey, down the road from me. And in the 80s, when nobody was caring about vinyl anymore, I called them up and I said, "I would like to come and visit your factory." And they said, "Why?" So I went. And this is before people had phones where you could record things. And I didn't even have a camcorder. And so I went and took still shots and watched how they make lacquers. And it was absolutely fascinating. And then Apollo bought Transco and moved the entire assembly line to California. And the first thing I thought of is, what if there's an earthquake? Both of these factories are going to go down at the same time. And what ended up happening was an internal fire. But anyway, that's not a problem anymore. So yes, I think vinyl is the true archival medium, because if you take care of your records, they will outlive you and they will sound great forever. I think I've demonstrated that. My 40-year-old, 50-year-old records still sound incredible. And I know every time I go on Roon to play a file, oh, software update, and then sometimes my NAS drive, people think I play digital on like a wood burning stove or something. I've got a good NAS drive system, and I've got everything backed up on solid state drives, and it's a very good system. But every once in a while, the computer that stuff is on doesn't talk to the NAS drive, and the NAS drive doesn't talk to the computer, and then I got to put everything back up. It could take 45 minutes to do that. Meanwhile, I could play records while that happens. So I think records, if you take care of them, are the true archival medium. And then I wanted to talk about the T-Bone Burnett thing, because I didn't talk about that. Some of you have heard about that. So T-Bone Burnett, the artist and producer, has come up with a process where you can take a lacquer and do a vapor deposition process and coat the lacquer to produce a lacquer that's impervious to wear, that will not wear. And in fact, after a couple of plays, it actually sounds better for some reason. So the first thing T-Bone did was he recorded a Bob Dylan concert. And some of you may have seen this concert because it was on YouTube for like a nanosecond, for free, and then it disappeared. So it was Bob singing, and it was Don was on bass, and some other great musicians were playing behind Bob, but only Bob was visible. Everybody was in the background. And so T-Bone and Bob worked out this. I can show you a picture. You want to see a picture of this? I can show it to you. Let me just wait a second. So Bob and T-Bone came up with this idea. They made a lacquer of Blowing in the Wind from this concert of Bob singing Blow, and Bob sung it straight. He didn't do his rhythmic weirdness where he goes, the answer to my friend is blowing in the wind. You know, he like, it's Bob singing, the answer to my friend is blowing. Like, you recognize the song after a couple of bars. You don't have to wait till it's almost over before I know what song it was. And they cut the lacquer, and then they put it through this coating, and they're going to sell it at Christie's as a one-off lacquer. The person that buys this lacquer will have the only performance of Bob singing Blowing in the Wind recorded like last year. And they expect that this is going to fetch a lot of money. And I don't know if it will. I don't know how many of you think it will. But at any rate, they had an event at the power station, which is now part of Berkeley College. And I was lucky enough to get to go. And T-Bone was there. And so they invited us into this room. And I'm going to show you what the person who wins this is going to get. So can you see that? It's really kind of like this. Is it turning? Yeah, I hate when that happens. Anyway, there's a plaque on there, and it's this wooden thing with a turntable, and it says, Bob Dylan, Blowing in the Wind, Neo Fidelity, 1 of 1, 2022. And then they played it for us because it's impervious to wear, so it's not a problem. So they had a turntable there. It was a Pioneer turntable from the 70s, a good, back when the Japanese were making these great turntables. So it was a good turntable. And the cartridge they were using to play back this lacquer that's going to sell for $1 million, that they invited all these people to come here at the power station on these, I think they were ATC powered monitors, was an Ortofon 2M Red. What? That's what they used, the 2M Red. Why? I don't know. And they had both a tape of this concert and they had a digital file of the concert. And T-Bone decided to use the digital file to cut the lacquer. What? And I know when Jack White heard that, he went, what the fuck? What are you doing? But that's what happened. I don't get it. So, you know, I said to T-Bone after the event was over, and I got to talk to him a while backstage, I just said, T-Bone, what the fuck? What was that about? And he said, well, we played both, and we felt that the digital was quieter. And I said, yeah, but okay, whatever. It's your business model. I don't understand that. So, and then he came and he spoke at Making Vinyl in Nashville too, and gave the same kind of speech. But we'll see how much it gets. Was it okay if I cursed? I'm sorry. People curse all the time now.
That's
but okay. Anyway, it was interesting. What I'm hoping is that eventually he'll say, we'll make this a thing that we can do. You'll be able to buy a lacquer, just like you can buy a $400 tape. People like, Chad Kassim will let you buy Norah Jones and let you buy all these other things on reel-to-reel tape for $400. So why not a lacquer? There's a guy in Austria, in Vienna, Doc Florian Kaps, who has a company called Super Sense. Some of you know about him. He's the guy that brought Polaroid film back, and he's an analog fanatic. And he's been licensing titles from UME. And so they will make a copy of a master tape for him and send it to him. So he's got Gets Gilberto, and he's got A Love Supreme from the original tape that has some dropout and other issues, but he got a copy of that. And he will sell you in a limited edition for $400 a lacquer cut from that tape. And I have the Gets Gilberto, and it sounds phenomenal. If you're a fan of that record, you would like to hear this lacquer. And there are people that say, well, after a couple of plays, it wears out. That's not true. It's absolutely not true. And I got into this big fight with a guy online who's got a website, I will not mention his website, but he's got a website, and he's a record store owner who claims that after a couple of plays, the lacquers are useless. That's not true. So one of the lacquers I brought to Munich to play for the people there was a lacquer of Tommy that I got, cut at 45 RPM from the original master tape. And I know that for a fact because I was there when it was cut, and it was the original master tape. And I got that lacquer in 2006, and I've played it dozens of times, and I brought it with me to Munich, and I played it for 100 people or so in the Nagra room. They had a pair of XVXs and all Nagra electronics, and the Nagra turntable, the new Nagra turntable, and I played it for people. And when that side was over, people burst into applause because it sounded so great. And I said to people, if you could get that lacquer and pay $400 for it in 2006 and enjoy it dozens of times, and it still sounds like this, probably not as good as it did in 2006, but it sounds as good as this, how many of you would pay $400 for that lacquer? And every hand shot up. That's how good it was. So now imagine a business model where you could get that lacquer with the vapor deposition, however they do it, and it'll play forever and sound perfect. How many of you would pay $400 for that lacquer? I imagine most of you would, of something that you like. So anyway. Any questions? Do I see the price of records dropping? No, of course not. The price of records cannot drop. Price of records will have to go up because the price of paper is going up. The price of glue is going up. The price of the ink used to make the jackets is going up. The price of oil is going up, and PVC is made from oil. I don't see the price of records going down until all of these prices drop. And maybe they will at some point. But right now, inflation is a worldwide problem, and it's 9.1% in Europe. It's 9% in America. It's bad in China. It's all over the world. We have inflation. I know it's all Joe Biden's fault, but nonetheless, it's a problem all over the world. And until that comes down to a certain degree, I don't see prices going down. But really, records are, it's interesting. So records, a Tone Poet record, for example, is like $35, or one of the records that Chad is doing is $35 or $40. And you get a beautiful gatefold Stoughton tip-on jacket. You get photos on the inside of the artists. This is the Music Matters model that was developed about 15 years ago. And you pay $40 for that record. So I don't know how many of you know this story, but at one point, Music Matters was a reissue label that was run by Joe Harley and Ron Rambach. And they were licensing Blue Note titles and putting together these beautiful Stoughton press laminated jackets with pictures of the sessions on the inside. And they were charging $40 to $50 for the records, and they were selling a certain number of records. So Blue Note got back into the record business on the 75th anniversary, and they were pressing not such great records, mostly from digital sources, well done digital sources, and pressing them in less beautiful jackets, not gatefolds, and doing it at Optimal, which is a great pressing plant. And they just didn't sound that good. And Don got to hear some of these records and said, why don't my records sound as good? And I interviewed him and told him why they weren't sounding so good. So they decided maybe they would do the Music Matters model and do what became the Tone Poet series. So when that was first proposed, somebody high up at Universal Music said, nobody's going to pay $40 for a record. It's ridiculous. So we're not going to do it. And then someone prevailed upon him to, all right, try it. It'll flop. So they did it. And guess what? It's a huge success. I mean, it's a huge success. People are willing to pay for quality. And I've always thought that, and they are. So. Oh, what do you think the future holds for RTI without Rick Hashimoto? Oh, they have a guy named Doran there who's also a really good. He's a plating expert, it really, you need a plating expert and you need a good person to run the presses. And RTI will be fine, and Rick will be fine down the road. Rick's records are going to be plated at RTI. So RTI does plating for many, many companies. So it's going to be fine. Oh, Fred Kaplan speculated that vinyl may be the most permanent archival medium. Yeah, I think that's true. And more archival is what the Scientologists did. Does everybody here know what the Scientologists did? Should I tell you that story? I think I'm safe to tell you that. So back when vinyl was going away and RTI was struggling somewhat because even they saw records falling off, the Scientologists came to RTI and said, we will build you a state-of-the-art plating facility. And they did. And what the Scientologists were doing was cutting lacquers and DMM. They were buying up DMM, which is direct metal mastering. They were buying the DMM and other cutting things and transferring all of L. Ron Hubbard's speeches to lacquer and to DMM discs. This is absolutely true. And then they were taking them to RTI, and RTI was plating them. And then the Scientologists invented a pop-top can kind of thing. So the plated lacquer or DMM part would be covered with this pop-top can thing that you would pop and peel back. And then on the front of this thing, they were like hieroglyphics. It would say, to play this thing, pop, and like when you buy something from IKEA, they don't have it in words, they show you what to do. And they invented turntables with solar panels, and they invented cartridges that don't use any rubber elastomers in them. So what you would do is, in the future, when our civilization is gone, and it's going to be, could be in a couple of years at this rate, all of these things are stored in the Mojave Desert. I know you're sitting there saying, this guy is so full of shit. What is he smoking? But that's not the point. This is all true. So in the Mojave Desert, there's a bunker. And in this bunker are all of these metal parts, all of these plated things that were done at RTI, all coated with this special coating, with this little pop-top can, with these turntables, with these solar arrays, with these cartridges that don't have elastomers in them. And in the future, way into the future, when civilization comes back, who knows what they're going to look like or what they're going to do, but they're going to find this bunker in the desert, and they're going to excavate it like King Tut. King Tut, it could turn out that he was a nobody, but he had a lot of money. So they're going to pull out these files. They're going to pop the top. They're going to play these records. They're going to figure out what the language is. And they're going to realize that the most important person in our civilization was not Nancy Pelosi, but was actually L. Ron Hubbard. That's what's going to happen. And we think of it as science fiction, but this is a true story. And so that's what really saved RTI. So, and even, with records, even if none of this infrastructure existed, even if there was no electricity and there was no way to play a record back, if a record was discovered in the future, they could spin it on a stick and put a pine needle in it and find some way to play it. So yeah, I think records is the most, and vinyl is the most robust format. Have you got any floppy disks in your house? Have you got any of those, little floppies? Have you got a way to play them? No. How many files do you have on a computer where you try playing and you don't have the software for it? But with a record, you can always play it. So, yeah. What setup do you recommend for being able to play both stereo mono records? 2 turntables, 2 toms, 2 preamps. So there's if you have a mono switch on your phono preamp or on your preamp, you get, to me, 80% of the benefit of having a separate mono playback system, because by flipping that mono switch, you're canceling out all of the vertical modulations electronically. So all the rumble, all the extraneous parts that are not in the signal, you cancel out. and that's 80%. So if you want to have 2 cartridges and two arms or 2 head shells, what you can flop out, switch head shells for a mono cartridge, that's better. But really, if you can just block out the vertical modulations electronically by flipping the mono switch, you're 80% there, in my opinion. And then different EQs. Oh my God. I got into fights a lot, but I got into a fight with somebody in Munich over that. So look, as soon as the stereo era hit, 99% of the mastering chains switched over to the RIAA curve. And that includes Decca London, you name it, Columbia, Capitol, EMI. The only one that may have gone a little bit beyond that into the early 70s may have been Teldec and DGG. There's some question about that, but everybody else went into the RIAA curve. And I spoke to engineers from Columbia Records, an old guy who worked for Columbia. And I told him that some people claim that Columbia used their own curve into the 70s and that Capitol used the Columbia curve into the 70s. And this guy said to me, "What are they on, crack?" That's what he said to me. He said, we all switched over to the RIAA curve. And I spoke to George Beddies, who was one of the original engineers at Decca Records in the UK. And he assured me that they switched over to the RIAA curve as soon as stereo records were being manufactured. And then I got into a fight with somebody in one of these Zoom calls who insisted to me that Decca and London records are different, that they weigh differently, that they're different curves. And I said to him, the Decca and the London records, if they're pressed in the UK, are the same records, only the labels are different. And this guy said, no, if you weigh a London record and a Decca record, they weigh differently because the London records, the guy that owned Decca records was cheap and he pressed lighter weight because he had to ship them over to America. I said, but it says right on the back of the London records, it says, use the RIAA curve. And he said, yeah, they do that to fool you because they don't want to make trouble, but they're different curves. I said, but the matrix number, if you take the record, they look, it's the same. Well, yeah, well, if you weigh them, they're different. So I went upstairs and got my digital scale. And I have the same record in London and Decca, same record. I put it on the scale. They weighed almost exactly the same, except the Decca was actually a little bit lighter because, there's variations in 180 gram or whatever their weight is supposed to be. It's the same. These people are out of their minds. Then there's a guy in Japan who insisted to me that you need a different curve for prestige records and a different one for Blue Note records. But they're both cut by Rudy Van Gelder on the same lathe. What are these people talking about? It's the same. How about the Bill Evans Trio, Waltz for Debbie from HDTT on tape, or even pure DST 256 from HDTT? I don't know what that means. Can someone explain that to me? Does anybody know?
It's in the link. That's what I sent. This is Steve. Yeah, basically this appeared, I think, in some recent magazine online talking about how wonderful this was. And I just thought you might have some familiarity with it. But apparently it's a specialty house that does tape, and then it sends out 1-bit DSD stuff off of those tapes. And anyway, nope.
I don't know. I know you can buy tapes from the Tape Project and from Chad, and legal tapes, and these are 2 off the master. So they take a master tape, they make a copy, and they will send that like to Chad, like at the Nora Jones or some of the other ones he has the rights to, and they have a copy of the master, and they will run real-time copies and sell you one, and you can get that, and supposedly it sounds really good. But you have to remember that these are unmastered tapes, and what you end up buying on a record or on a CD is a mastered version of a raw tape. Now, sometimes the tapes are perfect, but not usually. Usually there's some EQ done, there's some leveling, there's there may be a little bit of compression is added to make it sound a certain way. And that becomes a record. And the whole, okay, making a vinyl record is a whole different thing because you have to add the RAA curve. But still, you're buying an unmastered tape copy, and it can be either great or maybe it's not so good. So I don't know. Now, as far as buying a DSD version from that tape, I don't know. You know, I don't know. I know that the mobile fidelity one-step version of Waltz for Debbie sounds incredible, and the ERC version sounds incredible. They don't sound exactly the same. They're different mastering systems, so each one sounds different, but they're both really good. And there's all kinds of other things going on. There's a company in Japan that is getting flat transfers off of master tapes and putting it on a CD and selling it. I didn't know about that. So, my 16-year-old genius writer, Malachi, knows about that. So he's got Roxy Music's Avalon. They got a flat, and also they got the Rolling Stones. Which one is it? I think it's Sticky Fingers. They got the master tape. They got a flat transfer off the master tape, CD resolution, or maybe even DSD resolution, and you can buy a CD of that. It's a flat transfer, and no equalization and no compression, and you can decide if you like that. All those variations are out there, but if you like Sticky Fingers, the best version I ever heard is the one that Doug Sachs cut for Europe. And this happened when that record was finished. For some reason, the master went over to Doug Sachs and he cut lacquers for Germany. The rest of them were done in America. And that Doug Sachs cut version is the best by far of any. It is a tiny little TML mastering lab in the Inner Groove area. And I got one. It's really good. Okay, any other? Oh, the Neumann pole, the ERIAA. There's an extra pole that somebody invented. And if you go to my previous endeavors website, okay, I'll cut that out. I'll cut that out. And I say that because on Analog Planet, when they announced that I was leaving, they didn't say, I'm leaving to start my own website tracking angle. They said, we wish him well on his next endeavors. That's all they did. Okay, that's fine. That's their business. So if you go to Stereophile's website, you can find an article by Keith Howard. If you look up Keith Howard, and he talks about the RAAA curve and this extra Neumann pole, which has to do with the extension going out to 50K. And it doesn't really exist. This is someone's fanciful invention. And if you want to use it, some phono preamps have it, or you can disable it. And I disable it whenever I have it because I don't think it really exists, and it can do some not such good things. And Keith Howard explains it, and John Atkinson often explains it when he measures a phono preamp, and he'll explain to you. I don't want to go into the technical aspects of it, but I don't use it. Have you noticed that older records, as a general rule, tend to be thicker than newer records? No, older records, well, in the 60s, records were thick. And then in the 70s, we had Dynaflex, and they got really thin. But some of those records sound fantastic. And then they got heavier again in the 180 gram era. And then they got the 200 gram era. And then they got heavier in the UHQR era. So thick or thin, does it make a difference? If you've heard like a 140 or a 180 of the same record, there's a reason why a thicker record might sound better. And that is when a stylus is running through a groove, it's creating all these vibrations. There's a huge amount of pressure in a tiny little space, and it's sending out vibrations all through the record. And so it's a good idea to damp the record. That's what we have pucks and we have a vacuum hold down and all these different ways of damping that record so the vibrations don't travel through the record and come back. So a thicker record is going to transmit that energy less than a thinner record. So that's a reason why a thicker record might sound better. So I have a thinner and thicker version of some Neil Young records, and to me the 180 sounded better than a 140 of the same mastering, but that's up to you to decide. Records in the 60s were great, and records from the 70s started getting worse, because there was a PVC shortage. There was an oil shortage in the 70s, and we had the same problems we have now. And so they were melting down whatever they could melt to make records. But boy, if I play you Lou Reed's Transformer on the original floppy orange Dynaflex record versus the reissues that have come out lately, it sounds so much better. It sounds great if you clean the record. Remastering the vinyl from old master tapes must deal with tape noise accumulated over time. Are there preferred ways to mitigate the noise? Oh, well, when CDs came out, the first thing they did was get rid of all the tape hiss, and they ruined the records. So if there's tape hiss on the tape, I say put it on the record. It's what the thing sounds like. And you can listen through whatever hisses on the record, on the tape. Record thickness, do you have vacuum hold down? Well, I had a turntable that had vacuum hold down, and now I own a turntable that doesn't have vacuum hold down, but it has very, very good, it's got a very good clamping system, and I don't miss vacuum hold down, frankly. I'm surprised, but I don't miss it. So. Are you presently a Kermis user? Well, okay, Charles Kermis, boy, there's a guy who was his own worst enemy. And he's got an interesting process. I use his machine. He's got a vinyl restoration system. And the reason Charles is his own worst enemy is that he makes claims that, like, I was at an event with Charles, a making vinyl event in California, where he sat there and claimed to have invented digital recording in the 1970s. I said, Charles, there was digital recording. No, he said it was in the 80s he invented. I said there was digital recording in the 60s. There was PCM way before. No, I invented it. I couldn't get him to say no until he finally said, well, I'll show you what I invented a system whereby you can digitally record security cameras. Charles, you were at a making vinyl record music event, not at a security. What are you talking about? Anyway, but I've used his system and to restore records, and it works. So if you clean a record on like a vacuum machine and you put a fluid on it, and then you vacuum the fluid off, you're going to leave some kind of residue on that record. And the more times you clean a record with a surfactant or a fluid-based cleaner, you're leaving residues. And he's shown that on microscopic images. So what his process does, which could take up to a half an hour, it's time consuming, you keep applying this material, this chemical, and then you cavitate the record, and then you apply it. And each time you do that, this white material shows up, and that is what's coming off the record that was kind of adhered to the record. And after about 20 minutes of that, it stops happening. And then you do one final cavitation and you play that record. And I promise you, you'll hear it. It restores the high frequencies. I did my original Beatles White Album that I've been playing since 1968. That was clean and didn't have pops and clicks, but it sounded like it was literally just the grooves were wearing out. But what was happening is all the times I was cleaning it, I was adding a layer of stuff to it. And when I finished doing that cleaning process, it was like restored. So yeah, I believe in the Kermis process for that. My favorite protractor. Okay, it's not a matter of the protractor, it's a matter of the geometry that you use. So I wish I could hold up. So for me, Lofgren A is the best overall geometry to use for most records. It puts the null points at a point where there's a lot of distortion at the beginning of the record. All these geometries do that. And then it gets to zero tangent tracking error at early on. And then the distortion goes up, 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 and then it gets lower towards the end of the side, and then it gets higher again. You know, I wish I could show you these because it's much better. Go online, you can find the Lofgren A, the Stevenson, and the Bearwald, and you'll see where the distortion is the greatest and where it's the least. If you play a lot of classical records and they're older records, the Stevenson is good in the inner grooves because it puts the second null point near the end of the record. But there's a lot of distortion earlier on. So Riga uses the Stevenson method. And if you buy one of their cartridges, which has 3 screws, you put that in and you get the Stevenson method. If you're a rock and roller, you're going to hear more distortion over most of the record. It doesn't make sense to me. The Lofgren A is a good compromise overall. If you have newer records, then Lofgren A, it really makes a lot of sense because you're going to be out of the groove area by the time the distortion goes way up. Is that sort of clear? I wish I could show you how that works, but I've written about that for quite some time. I'm curious about what you think of the bunch of young equipment and record reviewers on YouTube. The bunch of, okay, well, a lot of them don't know what they're talking about. Okay, that's true. They don't. And so like my first YouTube video on the new site, I just say, you know, some of these people, what were they doing 10 years ago? You know, maybe they were selling plumbing supplies and now all of a sudden they're vinyl experts. Maybe some of them weren't even born 20 years ago. I don't know what they were doing, but they come on YouTube and they make like they're experts, you know? So I held up a piece of paper of records I was recommending to people, you know, overlooked treasures in 1969, you know, and these were great choices back then, and they're still great choices. And I said, before you start listening to what anybody tells you to buy, find out who they are. What do they know? What did they know 30 years ago? What did they know 50 years ago? I mean, that's what I started to notice. And some of these young guys are good, and some of them don't know what they're talking about. So check them out, see what they know. If they come on and talk about classical music and they say, my favorite classical record is Scheherazade. Scheherazade is good. And also Sibelius. I like Sibelius's Finlandia, and his cheese is good. That's somebody I wouldn't pay too much attention to, you know. And there actually are people like that I've seen, but God bless them all. You know, there's a woman out there, and I like her videos. I don't know if you've seen her, but she's, you know, it's probably in her 30s, and she has some good videos, and she listens carefully. She doesn't really know that much. You can tell by what she says, but she's very entertaining, and some of her advice is actually good. So, direct and belt drive turntables. So I've been a belt driver since forever, but now I'm a direct driver because this direct drive turntable that I ended up getting, it's done right. And I've heard SP10Rs properly done that sound really great. So I've come around, and they're good belt drives too. They both, look, they're records. Records have all kinds of problems. We all know that records have problems. They've got speed problems. They've got eccentricity problems. They've got, but for whatever reason, whatever it is, to me, I've got 8,000 files on my NAS drive. I've got high-res, I've got a really good DAC. I've got hundreds of SACDs and high-res files. And when I come down to my room to play music, as good as the files sound, I always come back to playing records. And it's not because I'm old. It's because there's something about it it's magical. When I go visit people, I have friends in Williamsburg. They're like in their 40s. You know, I'm like their grandfather, but they don't treat me like their grandfather. They treat me like their friend, which I love. And these guys, when I sit in their room and I look in front of me, what do I see? There's no television in the room. There's a wall of records, and there's a nice turntable, like a Dr. Fikert woodpecker, and a Kuzma 9-inch, and a Macintosh amplifier, and some big clip speakers. And we just sit there and play records and eat and drink and have a great time like I did in the 70s. And that's what they do. And they're like my peers. And that is so fantastic. I can't even tell you. And that's what I do, play records. That's what I think. I had my wife had a dog thing here, and this woman came down, and she loves music, and she never heard a really good stereo, and she wanted to hear Fleetwood Mac Rumors. So I played her the Cobos 192 24-bit stream, and it sounded great. It really did sound great. And she goes, "That's unbelievable. Amazing." I said, "Okay, now I'm going to play you the double 45." So I played her the double 45, and she went, "You know what?" She said, I'm a Coca-Cola fanatic. I love Coca-Cola." And the stream was great. it sounded like a bottle of Coke. The vinyl was like you sit in the soda fountain and they mix the syrup and the carbonated water. That's a real Coke. And that's what the record sounded like. That's what she said. I said, you know what? I can't disagree with you. That's what I hear too. So nonetheless, I still stream a lot of music. I stream, and some of it sounds incredibly great. So I'm not against streaming, but if I have the record, I play the record. I don't. And you know what? After all these years, if I look over and I see the thing spinning and the record playing and the whole thing going, I still like that. And when people say, "Yeah, because you're old and you're habituated to that," I said, "No, I've talked to kids who do that too, and they love it for the same reason." It's the great. This is the greatest time right now for music. Everything else sucks, but for music, you know, even CDs are sounding pretty good now. And so there's great. And you know what else is really great? The young engineers are getting back to making good records. When I was in Nashville, I was at Sterling Sound. I was talking to a bunch of engineers that were there. They're trading in good microphones. They're all the great Neumann microphones. They're all into making good sounding records. And recordings there was a really bad trough, probably in the 90s, I guess it was, and in the early 2000s. And now there are great records being made again and great recordings, whether digital or analog. And a great digital recording now can sound really great. And I don't mean good for a digital recording. I mean, it can sound great. And I've been fooled. And Sean Murphy he's one of the great recording engineers that there is, especially in film sound. And I don't think I think he would agree that people have learned how to use Pro Tools. It's improved. There's a Bill Frisell album. I could probably find it here someplace. It's a digital recording. It's on a record. The vinyl sounds fantastic. So, it's a great period of time right now. I'm having a blast. So, are we good? Leslie,
I think yes. You are.
I go on. My wife will tell you I can go on till it's just annoying the hell out of her.
Someone asked the question of what turntable you have. I don't know if you answered that one.
So I reviewed. I'll take a picture of it, and then I'll put it up there. So I reviewed the OMA turntable. Oswald Mills. So it's a direct drive turntable. And this was developed by a fellow in New Zealand who his job is as an industrial hydraulics engineer. So he knows engineering, he knows hydraulics, he knows metallurgy. I met him 4 years ago in Munich, or 5 years ago. And he asked me to sit down with him and tell him everything I knew about. He introduced himself. He said, "Well, I want to know everything about New Zealand. I want to know everything about turntables. I want to know what you think about different kinds of turntables." And so we talked, and I told him what I thought. I said, "And so what do you do?" He says, "Well, I'm a hydraulics engineer." And I said, "Oh, what are you talking to me for?" I dropped out of law school. He said, "No, I've been reading you for a long time, and you have a pretty good fundamental understanding of this stuff." And he says, "I've spent many years modifying Technics SB10 turntables, and now I'm developing my own turntable." And he developed it with Oswald Mills, which is OMA, which is in New York. A guy named Jonathan Weiss, who can be very difficult. I know he's a difficult guy. And so I reviewed this turntable, and I'm going to take a picture of it. Wait. So the picture I'm going to show you is of the prototype, because I couldn't afford to buy the real one. The real one goes for $300,000. I don't have that kind of money. The prototype that he sold me, which I'll show you. Can you see that?
Yeah, it's very cool and industrial looking.
Yeah. And so this is a cast iron plinth, and the arm is a 3D printed aluminum arm that was developed by Frank Schroeder. I'm sure many of you know Frank Schroeder and Schroeder arms. Frank is one of the geniuses in tone arm design. Him and Mark Gomez are two guys that really know their arms. At any rate, it's a cast iron plinth. And the gist of the design is the stator, which is the stationary part of the motor, is built into the bottom of this plinth right down here. So it is locked in. It does not move. It's not connected to it's not attached to a piece of circuit board. It's locked in there. The rotor is slightly above it, but not high enough up on, so there can be any magnetic interference with the cartridge. And the platter is, it's multiple materials of platter. And if you look and you see those brass plugs, those are not there for show. The whole design of the plinth was done at Bucknell University using, FFT analysis. And there are more plugs going vertically into the chassis. And there's a damping material in there. It's not hydraulic fluid, it's another kind of fluid. And so the plinth is purposeful in terms of vibration control. And the actual motor, so the motor is a bespoke motor that they developed, and it's controlled by a system that they came up with that's also programmable from afar using USB. You can go online and they can see how your motor is doing, and it's a very highly developed motor. And when I reviewed it, I thought the sound of this turntable was absolutely, I thought it blew away my Continuum, which I've owned since, for many years. And at the same time, I reviewed the Air Force Zero. And the Air Force Zero, some of you have seen a picture, that's a $500,000 turntable. It's an enormous belt drive turntable that at the top of the Tech DOS line, designed by Mr. Nishikawa. It's his final statement on turntables. It's the exact opposite of this. It's an ultra high mass turntable, and it's got a suspension, a pneumatic suspension, whereas this has no suspension. This thing is so heavy, you can bang on it, nothing gets through to it. And they're fundamentally different sounds, and they both measure very well. And I made files on both, and I sent them to Bob Ludwig. And Bob likes the Tech DOS better, and I like this better. And people say, well, Bob Ludwig likes it better, then that must be better. I said, well, it's what I like. That's what counts. I like this better. Bob likes that better. People have come down here when I had both, and some people like that, and some people like this. This is a fast, clean, and if you read the review of both of them, I say that this one has a very fast attack and a really nice sustain, and then the decay drops off. The Tech DOS one, it's sticky sounding. It's got this very generous sustain, and then the decay goes on. And some people will say, well, the big heavy mass is holding onto the energy, and that's a coloration in the turntable. That's what Riga would say. Riga would say, they make their turntables that have no mass, and they don't want the energy hanging around. They want the energy to drain out immediately. And so their turntables have that fast, speedy sound. And they say if you add high mass and the mass hangs around, it's going to end up coming back into the turntable and creating this lush, thick sound that people like, but it's a coloration. So, I don't know what's a coloration and what is real, but I found the sound of this turntable really inviting. And I love the Tech DOS too. If I don't know what to tell you. If you got to decide what you like and which is more accurate, I don't know that either. Play it back on different tape machines with different, amplification in the tape recorder. It's going to sound different. Every tape recorder sounds different. So they say, well, I wanted to sound like the master tape. And I designed my turntable to sound like the master tape because I have a master tape here, and I have, yeah, but you're playing it back on a machine that's got its own sound. An MCI machine is not going to sound like an Ampex. It's not going to sound like a Studer. So, all this stuff is a lot of hype. So it's whatever you like. There's going to be a less expensive version of this K3, and I'll probably review that for the absolute sound. But the first thing I'm reviewing for them is going to be the new SME Model 60. And early next year, I'm going to review the Wilson Benesch, the big giant one that I show on my video on my former endeavors YouTube YouTube channel. I'm having a lot of fun with that, so.
All right, Michael.
I had a great run over there at my previous endeavor. I wrote 320 something columns for them. I only missed 1 month, and it was because of a technical glitch. And so I will say, if you go to my previous endeavors YouTube channel and watch the video on upgrading your electricity, you should not miss that video, because that made the biggest difference in anything to do with my stereo, is changing the electricity from the roof down and getting rid of the aluminum wire that's been there for 50 years when the house was built, and running into a meter box that has corrosion from 50 years, and that ran into a panel in my house that's got old stuff in it, and just putting copper wire in and redoing the ground. The ground was a mess before. There were all these different ground wires that were spliced together, different kinds of material, and I had 3 different grounding rods that were this tall, and I had ground loops. I did everything I could to get rid of those ground loops on the inside with power conditioners, and I never got rid of all of them, no matter what I did. And this guy, Rex Hungerford, some of you probably know, he's in Seattle. He and a guy named Ed DeVito came here on their own dime. I wrote about my electrical problems when I put in a Generac generator, emergency generator. As soon as that was installed, it was like the straw that broke the camel's back in my room. So as the problems were big before, when that was installed, I couldn't listen to music anymore. It made my system sound like junk. And so these guys read about it, and on their own dime, they flew over here and they did a big inspection and made a proposal for what they would do to my system. The problem was all the electricity was now going into this transfer switch, and the transfer switch was deciding whether the power was going to go from the roof to my inside box or into the generator and then into my box. And that switch was creating this horrible ground issue and adding all this noise. And so that had to be bypassed. So the guys that put in the transfer switch came over, and they said, all right, for X amount of dollars, we'll build a thing around that. It'll take the electricity from the meter all the way across into your room. We'll put in a sub panel, and you'll bypass the transfer switch. Then these guys showed up, and they made a proposal that was balls to the wall, crazy, 2 10-foot copper clad steel things in the ground outside your house, and we're going to redo it's all going to be copper wire coming down, and it's only going to be 1 phase going into your listening room, even though it doesn't meet code, but it'll sound better, and all these crazy ideas. And so I said, if I propose that to my guys, I know what they're going to say. They're going to say, are you fucking kidding me? They're from New Jersey. So they said, just try it. So I said it to them, and my guy called me and said, are you fucking kidding me? That's exactly what, word for word. So these guys said, call your electrician. He's an audiophile, because he is. He'll do it. So he did it. And so it's all copper wire from the roof, twisted pair, according to a certain formula, into a new meter box. They built a new panel outside that is now the main panel. The indoor panel that was my original panel is now a sub panel. And then it goes twisted copper wire across the roof, across outside my house, into the house, into a new sub panel. At first it was a 1 phase until the inspector came, and he said, what? You can't have that. It's dangerous. If whoever comes in here, I said, whoever comes in here, I'll tell them it's a single phase and we'll add the other phase. No, I cannot pass inspection. So I had to put the other phase in. Not a problem. And when I turned on my system the first time after that was done, I no longer need any power conditioner. It's right into the wall, and it's completely quiet. Code here is 20 ohms. If you get down to 20 ohms, the grounding is sufficient. These guys put these 2 things, and they tied all the grounds together. I'm down to like 2 ohms. It is black, black, black in the background. No ground hum whatsoever. Amplifiers straight into the wall. Each of my amps has a 20 amp service. I just reviewed the Griffin, the new Griffin Apex amplifier. It's a Class A amplifier. It weighs 545 pounds. It's the last thing I reviewed for my previous endeavor. And when John Atkinson came to measure it, he said, this is the first time I've measured a big amplifier here where there's no voltage droop whatsoever. So I was able to get all the goodness out of this amplifier that puts out 1,490 Class A watts into 1 ohm. And these speakers do 1 ohm at 316 hertz. And most of the time it's 2 to 3 ohms across the whole bandwidth. So this amplifier and this electricity, it's incredible. So before you start in the house with a power conditioner of any kind, get your electricity fixed. I still use the Niagara 7000 on the front end to separate the digital from the analog, but you know, the system now is just, it's incredible. So that's it.
Okay, Michael, that's a great story to end on. I think we're gonna.
I hope everybody enjoyed it, and
fantastic. You are one of the best speakers we've ever had.
stop. That's because I don't stop. I keep talking. And I didn't do any of my ethnic voices. I didn't want to insult anybody. I didn't do any of them. Next time I'll do them. When I come live, I'll do them live so they're not recorded.
Okay. And we do want to have you out. So you've got to reach out next time you are on the West Coast. And we will figure out a time to get you together with everyone.
Okay. It was really fun. I love talking to everybody. I hope you had a good time and I wasn't too obnoxious, because I know I can be obnoxious.
No, obnoxious is good. And congratulations on your new endeavor. We're super excited.
Thank you. And you know, it's going to go live probably end of July. So, you know, for now, it's going to be all video reviews. And you know, one last thing. So Rick Rubin's a friend of mine. It's nice to have Rick Rubin as a friend. And Rick Rubin said to me like 2 years ago, you should do review records on video. Just put the record out and talk about them. You know, people like to watch. They don't like to read that much anymore. You should do that. And I never did it. And if Rick Rubin gives you advice and you don't take it, you're being kind of stupid, because he has very good advice, usually, even though he compresses his records too much. But still, you know, anybody that did all those Johnny Cash records, that's enough for a lifetime as far as I'm concerned. So, yeah. Okay. Okay. I'm going to go make dinner. And
okay. Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, everybody. I hope I was good. Okay.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.